A racist woman refuses to help black man, then she recognizes his face on TV. Marcus strolled into the grocery store, hands in his pockets, with an easy grin on his face. He chuckled to himself, thinking back to a joke he'd heard earlier in the day, something about a man walking into a bar and ending up with a pet goose. It didn't make much sense, but it had been a good laugh. Today, life felt smooth, simple. Just a quick trip to grab a few things, and he'd be on his way. Nothing complicated. But as he approached the entrance, he noticed her. There she was, standing like she owned the place, her expression set in that tight-lipped way that usually said, "I'm in charge here." She had that air about her, someone who decided her opinions were universal laws, carved in stone, perhaps even chiseled on a mountain somewhere. Marcus couldn't help but raise an eyebrow in amusement as he got closer. This woman was staring right at him, as if she were inspecting him for, what? A grocery pass? A membership card? A badge? Without missing a beat, she stepped right in front of him, blocking his way. Marcus stopped mid-stride and held back a smile. There was something oddly entertaining about the way she was so serious. He didn't get annoyed, he didn't get flustered. Instead, he felt a little spark of curiosity and, okay, maybe a bit of mischief. He could sense that this encounter was about to get interesting. "Can I help you with something?" she asked, her voice laced with suspicion, as if he just walked in with the sole purpose of causing a grocery-related scandal. Marcus blinked, feigning innocence. "Oh, I don't know." "I don't know, maybe grab some eggs? A loaf of bread?" He paused, giving her a smile. "Or is there some kind of special protocol I should know about?" The woman's eyes narrowed. She wasn't amused. "I just wanted to make sure you know where everything is," she said, but the tone was anything but helpful. "People sometimes get lost in places like these." She made a sweeping gesture around the entrance, as if the produce section were a labyrinth. Marcus put on a thoughtful expression. "You're absolutely right. You know, last time, I ended up wandering around the cereal aisle for hours. Got lost in the maze of cornflakes. Had to call in a rescue team." He was sure she'd crack a smile. How could she not? But no, she kept her eyes on him, assessing him like she was the grocery gatekeeper. The self-appointed grocery guardian, as he decided to call her in his head. It was like she had some sixth sense that told her who was fit to buy lettuce and who wasn't. Not willing to miss the opportunity for a bit of fun, Marcus gave her a nod. "Well, thank you for looking out for me. I feel safer already." She watched him with that unwavering, almost comically stern look, as he stepped past her and into the store. As he walked away, he could feel her gaze boring into his back, like she was just waiting for him to pull a heist in the organic section. He stifled a laugh. If she wanted to play store detective, he was all for it. He'd even be the suspect if that's what she needed. Inside, he headed to the produce aisle, casually reaching for a couple of apples, a smirk still lingering on his face. Sure enough, from the corner of his eye, he spotted her shadow. Marcus wandered deeper into the store, barely able to keep a straight face. He pretended to study the apples with deep concentration, taking one, weighing it in his hand, and looking over his shoulder to see if his store guardian was watching. Sure enough, Karen lurked nearby, peeking over the edge of the aisle, giving him a look like he was about to pull a fast one on the Granny Smiths. With a small grin, he held up an apple and gave it a thoughtful shake, almost as if he were listening for something, then muttered to himself, "Ice, prime apple material. She'll definitely want to double-check this one." He couldn't resist giving her a little nod and saying, loud enough for her to hear, "I think I'll risk it and buy this one, but don't worry, I'll keep it above board." She pursed her lips, clearly unimpressed, and shifted her stance, watching him like a hawk as he moved on to the bananas. He could practically feel her eyes burning into the back of his head as he picked one up, turned it over, and weighed it thoughtfully in his hand. "All right, so, just one banana," he said under his breath with exaggerated seriousness, pretending to make a calculated decision. "I wouldn't want to cause too much of a potassium scandal." As if on cue, Karen cleared her throat loudly. Marcus straightened up and, not missing a beat, offered her the banana. "Would you like to inspect this one for illicit bruising? I don't want any misunderstandings with my fruit choices." Other shoppers were beginning to notice the little show playing out in aisle 3. One older man with a cart full of canned goods grinned as he passed by, whispering to Marcus, "Just don't let her catch you with the avocados. Heard she's strict about those." Marcus chuckled and whispered back, "I'll keep that in mind." Avocados are a high-risk item. Karen, not one to be deterred, glared at them both as if they were conspiring to orchestrate the great grocery heist of the century. Marcus just winked at her, casually tossing the banana into his cart, and moved along to the next aisle. She was right there with him, shifting from foot to foot as he perused the cereal section. He took his time, picking up a box of cornflakes and holding it up like a rare artifact. He squinted at it, then glanced over his shoulder at Karen, who stood with her arms crossed, one eyebrow raised in suspicion. "So, is there a limit on these?" he asked, holding the box toward her. "Or am I free to choose my own fiber intake?" A few people nearby chuckled, clearly entertained by the scene unfolding. Karen, however, wasn't laughing. She simply sniffed and said, "I'm sure you know what you're doing, or I hope you do." "Oh, believe me, I'm well aware of the consequences of excessive cereal consumption," Marcus replied, deadpan. "My doctor warned me about cornflake dependency." He placed the box gently into his cart, looking satisfied. By now, Karen's face had grown tight, her lips pressed into a thin line, like she was mentally adding cereal antics to the list of offenses she was collecting against him. They moved on to the dairy aisle, and Marcus slowed down deliberately, making a show of comparing the different cartons of milk. He picked one up, studied the label, and looked over at Karen. "I don't know, 2%? That sounds a little daring. What do you think? Should I risk it?" he asked, his voice a blend of seriousness and mischief. 2% is acceptable," she replied, her voice laced with authority, as if he'd just asked for her blessing. "Oh, thank you for that," he said, giving her a mock bow before dropping the milk into his cart. "I'd hate to go above my approved milk percentage." By now, the other shoppers were openly laughing, and Marcus, reveling in the attention, continued his shopping spree with exaggerated caution. He pretended to sneak a look down each aisle before grabbing an item, like he was casing the joint, then giving a thumbs up to no one in particular as he added it to his cart. Karen, meanwhile, seemed even more determined to keep up with him, despite the growing chuckles and whispers around them. She shadowed him as he examined a bottle of olive oil with an intense gaze, turning it over in his hand like he was making a life-changing decision. "Extra virgin, huh? That sounds a bit too pure for me," he muttered, shaking his head as if the choice was deeply philosophical. He glanced at Karen. "Maybe I should try a slightly more seasoned option?" Karen huffed and turned away, pretending to organize a shelf of spaghetti, but she couldn't hide her constant, watchful glances. Marcus, determined to milk the situation, picked up a bottle of water and held it up as if he'd discovered a rare, forbidden treasure. A classic," he announced, holding it out to an amused couple nearby. "Pure, untouched H2O. Should I? Could I?" The couple laughed, giving him an encouraging nod. "You're a rebel," one of them said. "I try," he replied, adding the water to his cart with a flourish and a wink toward Karen. The whole store was now aware of their little dynamic, with shoppers nodding knowingly to Marcus or throwing him sympathetic looks as he continued his quest to acquire high-value items under Karen's hawk-eyed scrutiny. Karen's gaze remained unbreakable, yet Marcus could sense she was beginning to crack under the absurdity of it all. At one point, she actually muttered under her breath, "Some people just have no respect for the rules." "Rules?" Marcus asked, feigning surprise. "Are there rules for bottled water and cornflakes? I feel so unprepared. I should have studied." A few more laughs rippled through the crowd, and Karen's cheeks flushed ever so slightly. But still, she pressed on, following him like a dedicated sentry. Marcus, meanwhile, decided to keep turning up the charm. He moved over to the bread section, picking up a loaf and carefully examining it. "Now, tell me, is white bread too basic? Should I be exploring the artisanal sourdoughs?" Karen pursed her lips and said nothing, but Marcus could see her fingers twitching as if she were holding herself back from telling him off. Not one to waste an opportunity, he held the bread up like it was the crown jewel of his shopping experience and gave her an approving nod. "I think I'll stick with the basics today. I wouldn't want to overstep." She threw him an exasperated look, but he was having far too much fun to quit. He continued his daring grocery escapades, picking up the smallest, least controversial items with exaggerated care and humorously questioning each decision. By the time he reached the checkout line, he'd amassed a small following of amused onlookers. Karen, undeterred, hovered nearby, watching him as he placed his items on the belt one by one, as if any moment he might reveal some grand scheme she'd been right to suspect all along. With each item scanned, Marcus pretended to hold his breath, giving her sidelong glances, as if he was expecting her to pounce at any second. "Just a banana," he murmured as the cashier scanned it, tossing Karen a playful look. "Nothing suspicious here." The cashier, fully aware of the dynamic, gave him an amused smile. "Sir, you're a real risk-taker, you know that?" "Life's short," Marcus replied with a wink. "Sometimes you just have to, live on the edge of the produce aisle." As he paid, he caught Karen's eye one last time, and with a grin he leaned over and stage whispered, "Thanks for keeping an eye on me. I don't know how I would have managed this shopping trip without you." The store erupted into quiet laughter as he grabbed his bags, leaving Karen standing by the checkout, looking both flustered and strangely victorious, as if she'd single-handedly prevented a major grocery scandal. Marcus left with a grin, waving at her on the way out, leaving her to wonder whether he'd been serious or if she'd just become the unwitting star of a one-man comedy show. As Marcus made his way to the checkout line, he glanced back at Karen, who was still lurking a few aisles away, her hawk-like eyes locked on him. It was clear that this wasn't just a grocery trip anymore. It had become a game, and Marcus was determined to win. Once he reached the checkout, he leaned casually against the counter, ready to turn the mundane task of paying for his groceries into an epic spectacle. He spotted the cashier, a young woman named Jamie, who had already been watching the exchange with a mixture of amusement and disbelief. "Hey, Jamie," Marcus said with a big smile. "I need your help. I think I'm under investigation for some serious grocery violations." Jamie raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "Oh, do tell." "Well," he continued, lowering his voice conspiratorially, "I have a self-appointed grocery watchdog over there." He gestured dramatically toward Karen, who was now peering around a display of chips as if trying to catch him in the act of doing something nefarious. Marcus couldn't help but chuckle. "You see, I'm here trying to make responsible choices. I have my bananas, my cornflakes, and even my olive oil." He waved the items in the air as if showcasing an art exhibit. "But I think she's convinced I'm planning a major heist." Jamie laughed, and Marcus felt a surge of confidence. "So, what do you think? Should we make this official? I mean, I need to protect myself from potential legal action for e-grocery crimes." "Absolutely," she said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "I'll get you a receipt for Karen, the grocery watchdog. Just in case she tries to report you." Marcus nodded sagely. Yes, this is very important. The last thing I need is to end up on the grocery blacklist." As Jamie rang up his items, Marcus kept up the playful banter, pretending to be on edge as he watched Karen's movements. "You know, if she confronts me, I'll just tell her I have a receipt." "Sorry, ma'am, but I have all the paperwork right here." He waved his arms dramatically. "It's all above board." Jamie chuckled as she printed the receipt, and with a sly grin, she said, "I'll even make it extra official. How about I give you a little stamp? You know, for added credibility?" "Oh, perfect," Marcus replied, nodding enthusiastically. "I could really use that extra layer of protection." Once the transaction was complete, Jamie handed him the receipt with a theatrical flourish, complete with an imaginary stamp. "Here you go, sir. Receipt for your grocery oversight committee." "Thank you," he said, trying to keep a straight face. He turned around and accidentally bumped into Karen, who had decided to move in closer, perhaps trying to catch him in the act of something sinister. "Oh, pardon me, Karen," he said, feigning surprise. "I didn't see you there, just handling my legal documents over here." He waved the receipt in front of her like it was the Holy Grail. "Receipt?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. "What do you need a receipt for?" "Just making sure everything's above board, you know," Marcus replied, flashing his trademark grin. "Don't want any misunderstandings when it comes to my grocery purchases." Without missing a beat, he leaned in closer to her and whispered conspiratorially, "I wouldn't want you to worry about my..." He glanced at the receipt with exaggerated seriousness. $2 purchase? At this point, the other shoppers in line were barely containing their laughter. Karen looked bewildered, as if someone had just pulled the rug out from under her. "This is ridiculous," she finally managed to say, her voice shaking with a mix of frustration and disbelief. "Is it?" Marcus replied, completely unfazed. "I thought this was a grocery store, not a courtroom. I mean, look at my cart. Bananas and cornflakes. The most dangerous of all breakfast items." He handed her the receipt with a flourish, winking as he did so. "Take it. I wouldn't want you to have a heart attack worrying about my shopping habits. I'm just a simple man trying to live his life without causing a grocery scandal." As he turned to leave, he couldn't help but hear the snickers and chuckles of the onlookers. It felt good to know that he had turned the situation into a lighthearted show for everyone involved. Marcus felt like a superhero who had just saved the day, armed only with his quick wit and a grocery list. "Good luck out there, Karen," he called over his shoulder as he walked out of the store, feeling triumphant. "Remember, it's all about the receipts." As he exited, he could hear Jamie still laughing, and he couldn't help but grin at the absurdity of it all. The entire escapade would make for a fantastic story to share with his friends later. He could already picture their reactions, laughter mixed with disbelief, probably followed by a round of their own grocery heist stories. Outside, the sun was shining, and Marcus took a moment to bask in the victory of the day. He had not only survived a bizarre shopping experience, but had turned it into something entertaining and memorable. "Next time, maybe I'll bring her a snack to share," he mused to himself with a chuckle. "Or at least some more bananas." As he headed home, he felt lighter, the day's absurdity lingering in his mind like a catchy tune that refused to fade away. And who knew? Maybe he'd even make it a point to run into Karen again, just to see how far he could push the grocery watchdog antics. Life was too short not to have a little fun, after all. The day after their comical grocery showdown, Marcus strolled into the store once more, still buzzing from the previous day's antics. He was curious to see if Karen would still be lurking around, but he expected her demeanor to be just as uptight as before. Instead, as he stepped inside, he was greeted by a completely different scene. Karen stood at the entrance, her usual scowl replaced by a wide, overly eager smile that seemed almost comical. She was no longer the self-proclaimed grocery guardian but had transformed into something of a neighborhood helper. "Good morning," she chirped, waving enthusiastically at an older couple who were entering the store. "Can I help you find anything today?" Marcus couldn't help but stop in his tracks, a smirk creeping across his face. This was new. He leaned casually against the cart return, crossing his arms while taking in the spectacle. Karen was practically bouncing on her heels, her previous demeanor almost entirely forgotten. As the couple looked at her with a mix of confusion and amusement, Karen continued her newfound mission with all the charm of an overzealous tour guide. "We have some great deals on produce today, and let me show you the freshest vegetables." Marcus watched, barely able to contain his laughter. Who would have thought that his little grocery escapade would lead to this? He decided to play it up. "Look at you, Karen," he called out with a teasing tone, walking over to her. "You've taken up a new career as the neighborhood helper. I mean, it's only been one day, and you're already so dedicated." Karen turned, her eyes wide for a moment before she recognized him. "Oh, Marcus. Well, I just thought I'd try to be more helpful," she stammered, a blush creeping up her cheeks. "You know, make up for my previous behavior." Marcus stepped closer, a knowing smile plastered across his face. "It's good to see you're embracing your role. Maybe you could offer a class on how to properly assist customers?" "I'd sign up." Karen laughed, albeit a bit nervously, glancing around to see if anyone else was listening. "Well, I'm trying. I thought it might help to be, nicer? You know, to make the shopping experience better for everyone." "Honestly, I think it's working," Marcus said, waving at a few shoppers nearby. "I mean, who wouldn't want a personal shopper/moral support? That's like hitting the grocery jackpot." With every word, he could see Karen relax a little more. The embarrassment that had initially clouded her features was slowly giving way to genuine enjoyment. It was clear that she was starting to appreciate the humor in her situation. As they continued their banter, Marcus couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. It wasn't just about the ridiculousness of the day before, it was about Karen learning to adapt and grow from her experience. He had turned an awkward confrontation into a lighthearted lesson for both of them. "Okay, Marcus, you've made your point," she said, finally grinning. "But don't think I'll let you off the hook that easily. I'm still on duty here. So if you do anything suspicious while shopping, I'll be watching." She pointed a playful finger at him, feigning seriousness. "Fair enough," he replied, holding up his hands in mock surrender. "I'll make sure to keep my shopping list squeaky clean and stick to the essentials. No banana heists on my watch." As they exchanged witty remarks, other shoppers began to join in on the fun, chuckling at their repartee. It felt like the whole store was a little brighter, and Marcus could see Karen's confidence building with each laugh shared. Eventually, after a few more friendly jabs, Marcus decided it was time to head out. He picked up a couple of items, and as he approached the checkout line, he paused to turn back to Karen. "Just remember, Karen," he said with a wink, "being nice doesn't mean you can't have fun. Keep that grocery watchdog spirit alive. We need someone watching out for those banana thieves, after all." Karen burst into laughter, and for a moment, it felt like the two of them were old friends, sharing a light moment. "Thank you, Marcus," she said, her eyes shining with appreciation. "You've made my day much better, and I think I'm going to enjoy this helperch thing a lot more now." As he walked away, Marcus felt a warmth in his chest. It was satisfying to see someone turn their attitude around, especially in such a humorous way. Karen had learned a valuable lesson, and it was clear she was already becoming more approachable and fun. Stepping outside, Marcus couldn't help but smile to himself. The whole grocery experience had transformed into a delightful journey of irony and growth, and he was glad to have been a part of it. With a final cheeky glance back at the store, he muttered to himself, "Who knew grocery shopping could be such a trip? I should do this more often." As he walked to his car, he couldn't help but think about how these unexpected encounters made life so much richer. Sometimes, all it took was a little lightheartedness and a pinch of sarcasm to brighten someone's day and create a sense of community, even in the most mundane places. Marcus hopped in his car, feeling triumphant. He had gone in for groceries but had walked out with an unforgettable story and maybe a new friend in Karen. It was a win-win situation, and as he drove away, he resolved to share this ridiculous yet heartwarming tale with his friends later that night, convinced it would have them rolling with laughter. And who knows? Maybe next time he'd run into Karen, she'd have even more surprises up her sleeve. The grocery store was, after all, the gift that kept on giving. As the sun set on Marcus's grocery store adventure, he realized that life's absurdities often lead to the most entertaining moments. What started as a run-in with an overzealous self-appointed grocery watchdog turned into a delightful exchange of laughter and growth. Karen, once a strict enforcer of her outdated beliefs, had transformed into the neighborhood helper, all thanks to a little humor and wit from Marcus. With a playful spirit and a knack for turning awkward situations into lighthearted exchanges, Marcus left the store not just with his groceries but with a newfound appreciation for the power of kindness and connection. The whole experience served as a reminder that sometimes, all it takes to brighten someone's day is a bit of humor and a willingness to see the lighter side of life. So, if you've enjoyed this hilarious journey of irony and unexpected friendship, why not share it with your friends? Spread the laughter, and let's turn grocery shopping into a riotous experience for everyone. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell for more entertaining tales like this one. Remember, life's too short to take too seriously, so embrace the absurd, share the smiles, and keep laughing. Who knows? You might just find yourself in your own grocery store adventure.